On the way out of New Mexico this morning, Chuck wanted to visit the ghost town called Shakespeare, which is located in Lordsburg, New Mexico, very close to the Arizona state line. Shakespeare is on the National Register of Historic Places, and they have done their best to keep it as original as possible while trying to save the buildings. Admission is $12 per adult. The tour lasts about 2 hours. You have to take a tour to go through the ghost town, and those are available daily at 10 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. Our tour was led by David, a descendant of the Hill family who purchased the ranch that included the ghost town in 1935. So it's been in the same family for almost 100 years at this point. And if you stick around, you'll get to see where the last two people in Shakespeare were hung.
And there'd be buildings lining both sides of the street. And it would go much farther north than it does today. You'd tee off with another road and go left and right. Now, once the Hills purchased the property in 1935, none of those buildings were standing down that way, and they would just turn that into a pasture. And well, you see what Mother Nature does after almost 100 years now. Mother Nature just takes back over, and you can't even tell the street went any farther down, but it did. Don't know the history behind it outside of the fact that Jana Lou acquired this and stuck it over here and stuck supports under it, and it's sat over here ever since. She referred to it as a prospector's wagon. I've heard it called a sheep herder's wagon. It's just a neat little wagon.
Old hitch and post.
Yeah.
So, would this have had
This
an
would have
outer, it would have been these
like
bricks?
this, yes.
Okay.
But Manny, he repacked these walls and thickened them back out.
Yeah.
My father-in-law Manny did. It's the constant work you have to do to keep
right.
these buildings.
I'm sure.
And it needs done to this actually, to fill it back in.
Yeah, that's a foot thick at least. Well, even more when you get this. It's like a couple of feet thick. Keep it cool when it gets hot.
Well, no, this is a typical size saloon for the era.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no
The movies always make them look a
Yeah.
lot larger than
Yeah.
this,
Look
but
at
this
this
is pretty
purple
typical.
glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, purple glass.
That is cool.
The purple glass was created because there was manganese in the sand the bottles were made with.
Okay.
When you expose it to ultraviolet light over a number of years, it turns it purple. I think that's the same piece of glass that somebody picked up the last tour and brought in here and ended up on the table.
I saw a couple pieces.
At least they
lying.
left
It's all over the ground here.
Oh, it's out.
Look, there's a date on the wall, 1927.
Look how they patched the floors.
Yeah. So this is the Grant House Saloon. It was added on to the stage station during the first mining boom as a way for John Evanston to make extra money from the stagecoach passengers. And they say the boys in here get bored drinking and bet each other who could shoot flies. The tin on the roofs didn't arrive till the second mining boom. The railroad brought the tin. Most of the original roofs on these buildings were flat yucca stock lentilla roofs.
Okay.
You would have dirt over the yucca stalks and you'd line the ceilings with linen. And you don't see in the movies and stuff like that, and hasn't been commercialized and that kind of thing. Jana Lou and her parents made a point to make sure this place would never become commercialized as long as they were alive, and we're trying to honor their wishes and try to keep it like we think that they would like us to run it. But we're standing in the stagecoach station. This room was originally constructed in 1859. In 1865, when John Evanston arrived out here after the Civil War, this room we're standing in was the entire building. During the first mining boom, he added that saloon on to make extra money. And he also added the front dining room on to accommodate more stagecoach traffic. Now, by the 1970s, this room was in bad shape. And Jana Lou had to get some friends together And they would redo the whole back section of the building here, and also redo this yucca stockwoodia roof you see above your head. Most of the original roofs were like this one. She just redid this one in the 1970s. We've probably all seen a Dutch oven before and know how a Dutch oven works. A coal iron. How many of us have seen a coal iron before?
I have not seen a coal iron. I've seen the kind you stick in the fire.
Right.
but not
This is a coal iron where you
That's
put the
cool.
coal right
I've
inside
never
of it to
seen that.
heat it.
Yeah, that's cool.
This was the first one I had ever seen. Coffee grinder that's missing
grinder.
its drawer. This is a 1920s waffle iron.
Yeah.
This particular waffle iron was patented in 1922. I know that because it says it right on the lid. Literally.
Come on, stay here.
Some of the things were donated back by families
Oh, okay.
that were from here, and some of it was left here. It's various, ways.
Right.
Anytime you go to a ghost town and they tell you everything was just left there, bullshit. They're lying to you. I'm sorry. This is the hanging room. The lack of tall trees here. You needed a place to hang someone. This became the room. Well, we don't know how many people were hung in this room for sure. There are varying accounts depending on who you'd really like to believe. We do know for sure who the last two guests of honor were, though. They were Sandy King and Russian Bill Tettenborn, and they were both hung in this room in 1881. Russian Bill arrived
81.
1881.
Oh, 18. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. 1881.
Okay, sorry.
Russian Bill arrived with a hunting party, liked his prospects, decided to stay. He must have been trusted. He was working as a claims recorder for some of the miners here. Unfortunately, a couple of the miners showed up here and accused him of robbing them out of their mining claim. Some serious charges if your job's to record their claims. The local militia got together, decided there was some truth to the matter, and decided they were going to hang him for this. Sandy King, he arrived with the first mining boom. Like Curly Bill Brocious, he was hired by the mining companies to help protect their interests, and he had simply stayed around after they no longer needed his services. Sandy didn't do just one thing that was bad enough to get himself hung. It was an accumulation of things with Sandy. He had been a thorn in society for several years. And the morning before he was hung, he went to the general merchandise and he purchased himself a silk handkerchief. And in doing so, the clerk found it rather amusing that the tough cowboy was buying himself this silk handkerchief, so he was poking fun at him a little bit. Sandy, being the type of gentleman he was, didn't take very kindly to being made fun of and thought he would teach the clerk a lesson. When the clerk went to hand him the handkerchief, Sandy grabbed him by the arm and shot one of his fingers off. This was a bad mistake by Sandy. That clerk happened to be very well liked in town. Sandy, however, had been a thorn in society for several years. The local militia would get together, and they'd already decided they were hanging Russian Bill. They got to thinking about all the bad things that Sandy had done and just figured they might as well hang Sandy at the same time. That way they could throw him in the same hole.
Might as well.
The digging out here is not easy, and the one standing rule they did have in town was if you killed someone, you had to bury them. Given the hard rocky nature of this ground, that did help keep a lot of those indiscriminate killings down. These two gentlemen, however, would hear about the little party they're about to be invited to, and they would make things even worse. They would jump on a couple of horses that didn't belong to them and try to ride out of town. Horse thievery in the 1800s, that was also a hangable offense. These two were gathered back up, they were brought in here, and they were hung. This would be a horrible place to be hung. As you can see, this is not a drop you and break your neck. This is a pull you up and tie you off, or just kick the chair out from underneath you. The local militia members would stand around and wait till the two men quit struggling, then they would all go back to their homes. John Evanston, the stagekeeper, would just go back to his bed in the back room, and this is where they'd leave the men hang. They wanted to make an example of these two. What they didn't plan on, however, was a stagecoach rolling off. And the passengers getting off and coming in here expecting to get something to eat. The passengers would first have to help cut the men down, drag them outside, lay them beside the building before the tables were pushed back in. One of those passengers on the stagecoach happened to be a stringer. Now, a stringer in the 1800s was a reporter. They traveled the trains and stagecoaches, collected stories, and when they got to a telegraph office, they would string those stories back. Well, he got the bug in John about the dead men. He wanted to know what the two men did, and he wanted to know the full details of the hanging.
Just 1 minute.
Well, let's face it, this was technically a lynching. Remember, there's no sheriff here, there's no judge, these gentlemen didn't get proper trials, and John didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to get anyone in any trouble. He's busy trying to do his job by trying to feed the other passengers here, and the stringer's doing what reporters do. He's following John around, badgering John. Well, after a while, John gets mad, because the guy won't leave him alone. Turns to the stringer and says, "Russian Bill stole a horse," and of course he did. "Sandy King, Sandy King was just a damn nuisance. We don't think he asked any questions after that. Mr. Boyle had a sense of humor about him when he was busy renaming the town Shakespeare. This is the Stratford Hotel. This street would become Avon Avenue.
Nice.
Some of the famous people that have stayed in this hotel. President Rutherford B. Hayes, him and his entourage took over the building for a whole night when he toured the West. He was the first sitting president to tour the West. George Hunt, Arizona's first governor, before going on and becoming governor of Arizona, he used to wait tables in this building as a young man. He'd talk about that during his speeches. Lew Wallace, territorial governor of New Mexico, Union General, also author of the book Ben-Hur, used to stay here. And Billy the Kid washed dishes in the building after breaking jail in Silver City after he had robbed the Chinese laundry and escaped through the chimney. He needed traveling supplies to make it over into Arizona. They put him to work washing dishes and sweeping floors for a couple days to earn his supplies. He hadn't killed anyone at that point. He was just a petty thief at that point. I walk you around the building. I don't take you upstairs because of the condition of the building, but we'll walk around the main floor. Big step. So you needed a large dining room like this because you not only had to serve the patrons of the hotel in here, you also had to serve any of those miners that came in here to eat as well. With 3,000 miners, this was a busy building. This was the only hotel between Las Cruces and Tucson for about a 10-year period. Las Cruces was just Mesilla at that point. The only other option was going north to Silver City. That takes you out of your way if you're traveling between Las Cruces and Tucson. You can see what's left of the cloth ceiling in here. The cloth served a couple purposes. Not only did it help reflect light, it would also catch any dirt and keep it out of your food as well. You'd get your eggs in boxes like the one on the windowsill packed in sawdust. Cardboard and plastic didn't exist at that time. A little pepper grinder on the molding there. Stove's very neat. It has a warmer up top. It also has all these neat little flaps to help keep stuff heated as well. A cupboard like that would serve as your refrigerator. Adobe's an excellent insulator. You throw a door over that cupboard, it would help at least keep things cooler than room temperature. Your running water in here at that time would be one of your children in a bucket. They would become the running water, literally. No menus when you ate here. You ate what they were serving at that time, or you didn't eat. You didn't get too many fruits and vegetables because that stuff didn't survive the trip out here. A lot of biscuits and beans and rice and stuff that would make the trip. The right side was added on in about 1858. The Army used the building until the telegraph became prevalent and then abandoned the building. After that, families, plural, used this as a home. If you look up through the left side of the building, if you look through the doorway in the window, and you look up, you can see it has its old original roof on it still. It's almost 170 years old, which is why I would prefer you not to go in that side of the building. If you look up, see it has dirt on it still and everything. The tins just help protect it all these years. 50s camp furniture, all put together like Lincoln logs. You could take all the furniture apart, lay it flat on your wagon, and put it back together when you get to where you're going. But as you can see, it all
that's cool.
all just comes apart.
Huh.
So we got some sample rocks in here. I don't necessarily talk about the rocks on this counter here, but this was just given to me on the last tour, and it's no different than this. These are just chunks of slag out of the rail bed. that ran through the center of town. But copper oxidizes and turns green. All of us seen oxidized copper pipes before. This is an actual chunk of copper that was actually given to us by, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Harvest Host or know anything about that.
Yep.
But we are a Harvest Host site, and one of our Harvest Host members, as he was taking a tour, they deal in minerals, and
Wait.
I was giving him the tour, and as I was giving him the tour, he said, I showed him this, and he said, I'll get you a chunk of copper. And he went out to his RV after the tour and brought me this chunk of copper. It has little quartz in it and stuff. It's pretty cool looking.
Cool.
All the rest of these rocks were all found on the grounds here, outside of this piece. Iron pyrite or fool's gold is all through this. We've probably all seen fool's gold before at one time or another. Iron ore. The blue in this rock is azurite. See, I don't know if you've all seen azurite before, but azurite. This is the neatest rock here. This is a chunk of quartz. This black line that runs right through the center, the rock here. It's raw silver. You wouldn't get much silver out of this rock, but it does give you an idea what you're looking for. It's just oxidized.
Yeah.
Any of you have seen like a, say, sterling silver or something like that? You see it, it starts turning black if you don't take care of it. It'll start to tarnish. I use this as my sample rock. This doesn't have any particular thing special about it. It's a piece of junk ore, like I said. But if it had gold and silver in it, it was out of your mining claim, and you needed to get it assayed, you'd bring it in and give it to the assayer. He would take it and weigh it on the scale, and then take the giant hammer and pulverize it into a powder. And then put it into a crucible like this. Take the crucible, stick it in the assay furnace, and heat it up and melt it down. Then he would extract the various minerals and metals from one another by using things like arsenic and cyanide and mercury. Then he'd weigh each of the minerals and metals up in this scale after he separated them from one another, figure out how many ounces of each you could expect to get per ton of ore, then he'd write you out a report on your mining claim. You would have that report to take to present to maybe other potential investors, or even a bigger mining company you're trying to convince to buy your mining claim from you.
No ghosts were harmed in the making of this video.
We really enjoyed the ghost town.
Yeah, we did, and we hope that you enjoyed taking the tour with us.
Yeah.
And otherwise, please subscribe if you haven't done so. Think about giving us a thumbs up. Comment would be cool. And
until next time,
there you go. Fare thee well,
Nomies.
Nomies.